Chapter 1: Echoes of the Past. I sat at the quaint little cafe on Maple Street, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the soft hum of conversation. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the wooden tables, and the world outside moved at a leisurely pace. My friend Winnie sat across from me, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and exasperation. "Lana, you're so naive," she sighed, stirring her iced latte with unnecessary vigor. I couldn't help but chuckle. "True," I admitted, taking a sip of my cappuccino. Winnie leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "You're only saying this because you found out his girlfriend broke up with him." I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "That's why, Ed. Now's the perfect time for me to get back together with him." I winked playfully, trying to lighten the mood. "Crazy," she muttered, shaking her head. "If I could slam your head against a wall to knock some sense into you, I would. Do you remember how Daniel cheated on you? You're really being stupid, you know that." I gazed out the window, watching as the leaves danced in the gentle breeze. "Even if you think I'm foolish, I can't help how I feel. I still love him, Winnie. When you love someone, you forgive them, even if they've hurt you." Winnie threw her hands up in frustration. "Oh, whatever. You're impossible." I smiled at her reaction, but deep down, a knot tightened in my stomach. The truth was, I still harbored feelings for Daniel. Yes, he betrayed me, but matters of the heart aren't always logical. I tried to move on, to forget, but the memories lingered like shadows at dusk. "How can I move on?" I whispered, more to myself than to Winnie. "I feel better when I'm with him." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand gently. "Come with me to Francesca's house party tonight. Let's get you out of this funk. Maybe a few drinks and some dancing will help." I sighed, contemplating her offer. "I guess I don't have anything better to do." "That's the spirit." Winnie beamed, her eyes lighting up. "It'll be fun, I promise." As the evening approached, we made our way to Francesca's lavish house on the outskirts of town. The place was alive with music and laughter. Fairy lights adorned the trees, casting a magical glow over the garden where guests mingled and chatted. "Happy birthday, Francesca," I called out, handing over a small wrapped gift. She pulled me into a warm embrace. "Lana, Winnie, I'm so glad you both could make it. Come in, grab some food before the real fun begins." We navigated through the crowd, grabbing plates of hors d'oeuvres and glasses of sparkling wine. The atmosphere was infectious, and soon, I found myself relaxing, the weight of my earlier conversation with Winnie beginning to lift. A group of friends dragged me onto the makeshift stage in the living room, urging me to sing. I laughed, shaking my head, but eventually gave in. The microphone felt cool in my hand as I belted out a few familiar tunes, the crowd cheering and singing along. After a few songs, I returned to our table, breathless and flushed with excitement. Winnie was already setting up for a drinking game, her competitive streak shining through. "Ready to lose?" she teased, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Bring it on," I challenged, settling in for the night. As the hours passed, I felt the warm buzz of alcohol coursing through my veins. The room swayed slightly, and my laughter came more freely. At some point, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. "I'm just going to the restroom," I told Winnie, who nodded absently, engrossed in a conversation with someone I didn't recognize. The cool night air was refreshing against my flushed skin. I leaned against the railing of the balcony, gazing up at the stars that peeked through the canopy of leaves. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Before I could stop myself, I pressed Daniel's number. After a few rings, a familiar low voice answered. "Hello, Daniel." I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause. "Lana, are you okay?" "I'm drunk," I admitted, closing my eyes. "I shouldn't have called." He chuckled softly. "Where are you?" "At Francesca's house. There's a party. Stay there. I'll come get you." "Okay," I whispered, ending the call. But as I stared at my phone, I realized something was off. The call log didn't show Daniel's name. Instead, it showed Ralph. "Ralph," I mumbled, confusion clouding my mind. Ralph was an acquaintance, someone who had been persistently trying to win my affection. Tall and brooding, with a physique that hinted at hours spent in the gym, he was everything I thought I didn't want. Before I could make sense of it, a voice broke through my haze. "Hey, Lana." I turned to find Ralph standing beside me, his dark eyes reflecting concern. "Ralph? What are you doing here?" "You called me," he said simply. "You told me you loved me and asked me to come." Embarrassment flooded my senses. I thought I called Daniel." He gave a small smile. "Well, you called me." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you." "It's no bother," he assured, stepping closer. "Let me take you home." "I can manage," I insisted, the ground swaying slightly beneath me. He looked at me skeptically. "You can barely stand straight. Please let me help." "Fine," I relented, too tired to argue. As we left the party, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into uncharted territory. Chapter 2. Unintentional Entanglements. The ride home was quiet, punctuated only by the soft hum of the car engine. I stared out the window, watching the world blur past in streaks of neon light and shadow. "Thank you for this," I murmured, stealing a glance at Ralph. He kept his eyes on the road but smiled softly. "Anytime." We pulled up in front of my apartment building. I fumbled with the seatbelt, my fingers clumsy and uncooperative. "Here, let me help," Ralph offered, leaning over to unfasten it. Our faces were inches apart, and for a fleeting moment our eyes met. There was an intensity in his gaze that made my heart skip a beat. "I should go," I whispered, breaking the spell. "Right," he nodded, pulling back. I stepped out of the car, the cool night air sobering me slightly. As I made my way to the entrance, I heard his window roll down. "Lana." I turned. "Yes. Get some rest," he said gently. "And call me if you need anything." I managed a small smile. "Good night, Ralph." Inside, the apartment was dark and silent. My roommate Hannah, or Han as I called her, was likely already asleep. I tiptoed to my room, slipping under the covers and closing my eyes. Sleep came swiftly, pulling me into a dreamless abyss. Morning arrived with harsh rays of sunlight piercing through the curtains. I squinted against the brightness, my head throbbing in protest. Groaning, I reached for my phone. A notification from Winnie flashed on the screen, filled with apologies for leaving me at the party. "It's okay," I typed back, assuring her that I'd made it home safely. A message from an unknown number caught my eye. "Good morning, Lana. Hope you're feeling better. Ralph." I stared at the screen, memories of the previous night flooding back. My cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and something else I couldn't quite place. "Morning," I replied hesitantly. "Thanks again for helping me last night." Almost immediately, a reply came through. "No thanks needed. Just glad you're okay." I set the phone aside, needing a distraction. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted from the kitchen, drawing me out of bed. "Good morning," Han greeted cheerfully, flipping pancakes on the stove. "Morning," I mumbled, sliding onto a stool at the kitchen island. "Rough night," she teased, glancing over her shoulder. "You have no idea." Han placed a plate of pancakes in front of me, raising an eyebrow. "Care to share?" I considered telling her about Ralph but decided against it. Just had a bit too much to drink at Francesca's party. She nodded knowingly. "Well, nothing a hearty breakfast can't fix." As we ate, Han mentioned that she had a visitor coming over later. "I might be out when he arrives. Do you mind letting him in?" "Sure," I shrugged. "Who is it?" "Just a friend," she said evasively, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. The day passed uneventfully. I worked from home, typing away on my laptop in the cozy confines of the living room. Around mid-afternoon, the doorbell rang. "That must be Han's friend," I muttered, pushing my chair back. Opening the door, I was met with the sight of Ralph, a basket of fruit in hand. "Ralph!" I exclaimed, surprise evident in my voice. "Hey," he smiled warmly. "Han asked me to drop this off." "You're Han's visitor?" He nodded. "Mind if I wait for her?" I hesitated but stepped aside. "Sure, come on in." He placed the basket on the dining table, and an awkward silence settled between us. "Working from home?" he asked, nodding towards my laptop. "Yeah," I replied, sitting back down. "Got a lot to catch up on." "I won't disturb you," he promised, settling on the couch. Minutes turned into an hour. I tried to focus on my work, but I could feel his gaze every so often. Stealing a glance, I found him watching me, a soft smile on his face. "Do you need something?" I finally asked, unable to ignore it any longer. Just enjoying the view, he quipped. I rolled my eyes, but a small smile tugged at my lips. Smooth, he chuckled. Couldn't resist. As the afternoon wore on, Han still hadn't returned. I decided to start on some household chores. I'm going to do some laundry, I announced. Need a hand? Ralph offered. I eyed him skeptically. You know how to do laundry? Believe it or not, I do. Shrugging, I figured an extra set of hands couldn't hurt. We gathered the laundry and headed to the small utility room. Separate the colors from the whites, I instructed. Yes, ma'am. He saluted playfully. We fell into a comfortable rhythm. The sounds of water filling the basin and the gentle swish of fabric, a soothing backdrop to our conversation. Where did you learn to do laundry? I asked, genuinely curious. I've been on my own for a while, he explained. Not everything can be handled by a machine. Impressive, I admitted. There's more to me than meets the eye, he grinned. I laughed softly, shaking my head. I suppose so. A comfortable silence enveloped us. The domesticity of the moment felt oddly intimate. Lana, he began, his tone more serious. About last night. I stiffened slightly. What about it? I'm glad you called, he said sincerely. Even if it was by accident. I met his gaze, the sincerity in his eyes catching me off guard. Why? Because I've been wanting an excuse to spend more time with you. My heart skipped a beat. Ralph. He held up a hand. I know you've been through a lot with Daniel. I don't want to pressure you, but I also don't want to pretend that I don't have feelings for you. I looked away, the weight of his words settling over me. It's complicated. I get that, he nodded. But I'm willing to wait. Why? I asked, genuinely bewildered. Because you're worth it. The simplicity of his statement left me momentarily speechless. Before I could formulate a response, the washing machine beeped, breaking the tension. I should get that, I murmured, turning away. He didn't push further, and for that I was grateful. Chapter 3: Shades of Grey. Days turned into weeks, and Ralph became a regular presence in my life. Whether he was dropping by with lunch, helping with chores, or just keeping me company while I worked, his easygoing nature began to wear down my defenses. One evening, as the autumn air carried the first hints of winter, we found ourselves curled up on the couch watching a movie. Han was out for the night, leaving the apartment unusually quiet. Do you want some popcorn? Ralph offered, stretching as he stood. Sure, I smiled. He disappeared into the kitchen, and I took the moment to reflect. The lines between friendship and something more had blurred, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. The ghost of Daniel's betrayal still lingered, but Ralph's steady presence was like a balm to old wounds. Here you go, he returned, handing me a bowl of buttery popcorn. Thanks. We settled back in, the soft glow of the television casting shadows across the room. Halfway through the movie, I felt his hand brush against mine. A simple gesture, but it ignited a flurry of butterflies in my stomach. I glanced over at him. Ralph. Yes. I hesitated, searching for the right words. Why are you so persistent? He tilted his head thoughtfully. Because I know what I want. And what's that? You. The directness of his answer caught me off guard. You barely know me. I've known you longer than you realize, he countered. I frowned. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. We went to the same high school. I was a couple of grades ahead, but I've had a crush on you since then. Memories of school days flooded back. I don't remember. I was different back then, he admitted. Quiet, kept to myself. You were always surrounded by friends, full of life. People change, I mused. They do, he agreed. But some feelings don't. A warmth spread through me and I found myself leaning closer. Ralph, He closed the distance, his lips brushing softly against mine. The kiss was tentative, testing the waters. I felt a surge of emotion, a mix of fear and excitement. Breaking away, I searched his eyes. I don't want to get hurt again. I would never hurt you, he promised, sincerity lacing his words. I wanted to believe him. It's just hard to trust. He nodded understandingly. Then let me earn it. A small smile tugged at my lips. You might regret that. Never, he assured, pulling me into a warm embrace. As I rested my head against his chest, I allowed myself to bask in the comfort of the moment. Perhaps it was time to let go of the past and embrace the possibilities of the future. Chapter 4. Unveiling Layers. Our relationship shifted after that night. The unspoken barriers between us began to dissolve, replaced by a burgeoning connection that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. One afternoon, I decided to surprise Ralph at his office. I packed a picnic lunch and headed downtown, the city alive with the bustle of midday activity. The sleek glass building that housed his company loomed overhead. I entered the lobby, the polished marble floors and contemporary art exuding an air of sophistication. "Good afternoon," the receptionist greeted. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to see Ralph de la Torre," I smiled. "I'm a friend." Her eyes flickered with recognition. "Ah, Miss Lana, right?" I blinked in surprise. "Yes. Mr. de la Torre mentioned you might stop by. His office is on the 15th floor. I'll let him know you're on your way." "Thank you." I rode the elevator up, the gentle hum of the machinery a soothing backdrop to my nervous anticipation. Stepping out onto his floor, I was greeted by a spacious open-plan office, the walls adorned with abstract art. Ralph's assistant guided me to his office. "He's just finishing up a meeting." I waited by the large windows that overlooked the city skyline. The door opened and I turned to see Ralph, his tie loosened and a look of pleasant surprise on his face. "Lana, this is a nice surprise." "I hope I'm not interrupting," I said, holding up the picnic basket. "Not at all," he grinned. "This is perfect timing." We made our way to a small park across the street. The sun was warm, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the old oak trees. "This is lovely," Ralph remarked, settling down on the picnic blanket. "I thought you could use a break," I replied, unpacking sandwiches and fruit. He took a bite, savoring the flavors. "You spoil me." I laughed lightly, just returning the favor. He glanced at me thoughtfully. "You know, I've been meaning to ask you something." "What's that?" "Would you consider moving in with me?" I nearly choked on my drink. "That's sudden." He shrugged sheepishly. "Maybe, but it feels right. We spend so much time together already." I pondered his proposal. "Let me think about it. It's a big step." "Of course," he nodded. "No pressure." As we enjoyed the rest of our lunch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a crossroads moment. My feelings for Ralph had grown deeper, and the idea of building a life together stirred both excitement and apprehension. Chapter 5. Ghosts Resurface. Just as things seemed to be falling into place, the past decided to make an unwelcome appearance. Late one evening, as the city lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth, a familiar name flashed on my phone screen. "Daniel." I stared at the name, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I hesitantly answered. "Hello, Lana." His voice was soft, tinged with regret. "It's been a while. What do you want, Daniel?" "I just wanted to talk. Can we meet?" I hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," he pleaded. "Just once. I owe you an apology." Sighing, I relented. "Fine. Tomorrow afternoon at the cafe on Maple." "I'll be there," he said gratefully. The next day, I sat at our old spot, the memories bittersweet. Daniel arrived promptly, his expression contrite. "You look well," he remarked, taking a seat. "Why are you here, Daniel?" I cut straight to the point. He took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize for everything. For hurting you." "It's in the past," I replied coolly. "I regret what I did," he continued. "Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." I met his gaze steadily. "I've moved on." "I heard," he nodded. "You're with Ralph now." "Yes, and I'm happy." He swallowed hard. "Is there any chance, any at all, that we could try again?" Anger flared within me. "You think you can just waltz back into my life after everything?" "I made a mistake," he insisted. "People change." "Maybe they do." I stood up, gathering my things. "But I've found someone who treats me right. Someone who doesn't take me for granted." "Please, Lana." He reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "Goodbye, Daniel." Walking away, I felt a sense of closure. The door to that chapter of my life was firmly shut. Chapter 6. Testing Trust. That evening, I told Ralph about my encounter with Daniel. He had the nerve to ask for a second chance, I scoffed. Ralph's jaw tightened. And what did you say? I told him no, of course, I assured. He relaxed slightly. Good. I sensed an underlying tension. Do you trust me? He met my gaze. It's not you I don't trust. It's him. Daniel is in the past, I reaffirmed. You're my present and my future. A small smile played on his lips. I like the sound of that. Then trust me, I said softly. There's nothing to worry about. He pulled me into a tight embrace. I love you, Lana. I love you too. Chapter 7. Unforeseen Hurdles. Life threw us another curveball when Ralph's company faced unexpected financial troubles. One evening, I found him sitting alone in the dark, his expression grave. What's wrong? I asked gently. He sighed heavily. There's a major issue with the company. Our CEO embezzled funds, and we're facing bankruptcy. My heart sank. Oh, Ralph, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to burden you with this, he confessed. You're not burdening me. We're in this together. He looked at me, vulnerability etched on his face. It might be too late. Investors are pulling out. I don't know how to fix this. I took his hand firmly. We'll find a way. He shook his head. I appreciate your support, but this is beyond help. An idea formed in my mind. What if I invest? He blinked in surprise. What do you mean? I have resources, I explained. I can help stabilize the company. Lana, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. After much discussion and a strategic plan, we pooled our efforts. With my investment and influence, we managed to rally new support for the company. Slowly but surely, the business began to recover. You're incredible, Ralph marveled as we reviewed the latest financial reports. I smiled. We're a good team. He leaned in, his eyes filled with gratitude. I don't know what I'd do without you. Hopefully, you'll never have to find out. Chapter 8. Solidifying Bonds. With the crisis averted, our relationship grew stronger. One sunny afternoon, Ralph suggested a getaway. How about a trip to the Maldives? He proposed. That sounds amazing, I agreed enthusiastically. We spent a week basking in the sun. The turquoise waters and white sandy beaches, a paradise beyond imagination. The time away allowed us to reconnect and cherish the simple joys of being together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Ralph pulled out a small velvet box. Lana, he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. These past months have been the best of my life. You stood by me through everything. Will you marry me? Tears welled in my eyes. Yes, I whispered, overwhelmed with happiness. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and we sealed the moment with a tender kiss. Chapter 9. Intertwined Futures. Wedding preparations commenced, and before we knew it, the day had arrived. Surrounded by friends and family, we exchanged vows beneath a canopy of blooming flowers. Winnie stood beside me as my maid of honor, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. I'm so happy for you, she whispered. Thank you, I squeezed her hand. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Ralph's eyes never left mine, his love evident in every glance. As the night drew to a close, we retreated to a quiet corner. To our future, he toasted, clinking his glass lightly against mine. To us, I smiled. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. Settling into married life was a journey of discovery. We found comfort in shared routines and excitement in planning for the future. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, I felt a wave of nausea. Concerned, Ralph insisted we visit the doctor. Congratulations, the doctor beamed. You're expecting. Joy and disbelief washed over us. You're going to be a father. I grinned, tears of happiness spilling over. Ralph pulled me into his arms. This is the best news ever. We spent the following months preparing for our new arrival. The house filled with baby books, tiny clothes, and endless discussions about names. I'm thinking Raphael for a boy, Ralph suggested. I laughed. You just want to name him after yourself. Can you blame me? He winked. How about Sophia for a girl? Beautiful, he agreed. Chapter 11 Full Circle. Winnie and Donald announced their pregnancy shortly after, and we found ourselves navigating the journey of parenthood alongside our closest friends. Playdates are going to be epic, Winnie joked, her hand resting on her growing belly. Can't wait, I laughed. As our due date approached, Ralph became increasingly attentive, doting on me at every opportunity. Are you sure you don't need anything? He asked for the 100th time one afternoon. I'm fine, I assured, amused by his concern. He knelt beside me, resting his hand gently on my stomach. I just can't believe we're going to be parents soon. Me neither, I sighed contentedly. Chapter 12 Arrival. The day finally arrived. Amidst a flurry of activity and a whirlwind of emotions, we welcomed our son into the world. He's perfect, Ralph whispered, cradling the tiny bundle. I smiled wearily. He has your eyes. Future heartbreaker, Ralph chuckled softly. We named him Gabriel, a nod to new beginnings and hope. As we settled into life as a family of 3, I couldn't help but reflect on the path that led us here. From the uncertainty of past relationships to the unexpected twists that brought Ralph into my life, every moment felt like a stepping stone to this happiness. Chapter 13 Embracing the Journey. Life moved forward in a series of cherished moments. First steps, first words, and countless memories woven together to create the tapestry of our lives. One evening, as we watched Gabriel play in the yard, Ralph took my hand. Remember when you proposed to me? He mused. I laughed lightly. How could I forget? You dropped the cake. He grinned. Best accident ever. Agreed. He turned serious for a moment. Thank you for taking a chance on me. I leaned into him. Thank you for never giving up. He kissed the top of my head. Here's to many more adventures. Together, I affirmed. Chapter 14 Legacy of Love. Years passed and our family grew. We welcomed a daughter, Sophia, completing our little circle. Winnie and Donald remained close, and our children became fast friends, their laughter filling our homes. One day, as I watched Gabriel and Sophia playing beneath the old oak tree, I felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. Mom, Gabriel called. Look what we made. He held up a drawing, a colorful depiction of our family. It's beautiful, I praised, pulling them both into a hug. Ralph joined us, wrapping his arms around us all. What's this masterpiece? Our family, Sophia explained proudly. He smiled warmly. It's perfect. Chapter 15 Reflections. As the sun set on another day, painting the sky with shades of lavender and gold, Ralph and I sat on the porch, hands entwined. Life has a funny way of working out, I mused. That it does, he agreed. Do you ever think about how things might have been different? He considered for a moment. I believe every choice led us here. I wouldn't change a thing. Neither would I. He squeezed my hand gently. I'm grateful for every moment. I rested my head on his shoulder. Me too. We sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of our children's laughter echoing in the background. To the unexpected, I whispered. To us, he echoed. Epilogue. The Heart's Echo. Our story is one of twists and turns, of love found in the most unlikely places. What began as a chance encounter evolved into a lifelong journey, rich with memories and bound by unbreakable ties. Life is woven with threads of joy and sorrow, of challenges and triumphs. But through it all, love remains the constant, guiding us forward. As I look back on the path we've traveled, I am reminded that the heart often knows what the mind cannot comprehend. Trusting in that truth led me to a happiness I never imagined. And so our tale continues, each day a new chapter waiting to be written, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of tomorrow.